seaboard who are working in counties that have teacher incentive programs, okay? And I guess for an experienced high school teacher like myself, I'm actually wondering, is the process really worth the payout? And I heard you talk about the behaviors. And I'm sit back, and although the school district, the county that I'm employed in, we don't have that. But as I sit back and I listen to the dialogue as those behaviors, because in some counties those behaviors can be 25 different things. And every time that these people come into your classroom, you must hit all 25 of these elements. So those behaviors can be an extremely inundating and meticulous process. For a teacher like me who is nationally board certified and who may want to, jump on the bandwagon and become involved in it if my county offered it. But who decides on these amounts, and exactly how is this determined? Because I'm just wondering from this dialogue, it's just not worth the payout. The process is just not worth the payout. $2,000, $1,500.
Yeah. That's again been one of the major issues, and I didn't get a chance to run through our list of parameters that we think. One is that the incentives need to be significant enough to make a difference.
Right.
But even with that, we had a number of our teachers in Chattanooga. There's two problems that come with that. We brought a group of our teachers together early on in Chattanooga. And if you had national board certification, and if you had met these other designations of highly qualified, and you transferred into high-need schools, you got a $5,000 bonus. And so we said, well, that was significant enough to get people to do something. So there's two issues. One, is it significant enough to get someone to do something? Move into a hard-to-staff school, take a hard-to-staff position, take on extra duties and responsibilities. Two, then, is it enough to keep you there in that situation? And one of the things that Chattanooga had to learn early on was offering someone $5,000 to move to a high-need school. And they learned this in Florida. There's a big program in Florida with national board certification that did the same thing. They paid teachers $5,000 to move to a hard-to-staff school. But they did nothing to change the conditions in that school to make it hard to staff in the first place. So paying someone $5,000 to go to a school that's dysfunctional might get them there, but many of these folks left. They said, it's not worth it if you're not addressing the underlying issues of why these schools are low performing, of what kind of supports that the students get. If you can't make my job doable, then just paying me money is not going to be enough. And then in Denver, one of the biggest challenges in Denver is that this program system with these 5 elements, they had to hire a whole staff of accountants and administrators to move them all. They actually couldn't hire them. They couldn't use the money. For the good part is $25 million, you can't use any of it for administration. But they have this huge, complicated administrative process, and that's one of the findings in our site visit. And over again, people told us, we don't understand it, we don't know if it's worth it, we can't figure out, the teachers don't know, all right, if I do this, I get $357, if I do this, I get $1,024, and if I do this, I get $2,107, and which of these 25 checks do I need to get? And so it's extremely complicated. And so, again, the single salary schedule is not great, but it is extremely efficient and extremely cheap. I don't say that to advocate for it. I think we need to change it rather dramatically. But in a lot of these systems, and the sad part about it is the pay-for-performance systems, the incentives and how well they work has a lot to do with where you are. Again, if you are a teacher in New Jersey, this is one of the tough things in Maryland, where we actually pay our teachers a pretty decent wage comparatively. But if you're in New Jersey and you're making $55,000 and you're getting a $5,000 bonus, you're like, I don't know, jump through a whole lot of hoops. If you're in Louisiana and you're making $27,000 and you're going to get $5,000, you're going to jump through some hoops for that money. And so that a lot of what we found is these places where teachers are dramatically underpaid. They're much more likely that these incentives are going to make people jump through the hoops. So one of the things we did is very interesting. I should give you a copy of we went and talked to, we went to 6 site visits and talked to about 125 or so teachers, just like you're doing, and just said, you know, what's all this mean to you? Is it worth it? What do you think about it? And we developed a report about that, and I'm glad to share that with you. Be interested to hear what your folks have to say about it as well. So thank you.
Well, I think one of the things that, one of the ways in which we're trying and we're hoping that it will validate what we're thinking, how the grant was written, was that it's not just teachers, it's teacher and leadership. You know, the leadership component and what that principal and how that principal relates to his teachers, that's where the difference is going to occur. If you just focus on the teacher or you just focus upon the leadership in the school, it doesn't change the culture of the school. And for me, through my lens as an OD person, I believe that that's the only way that you're really going to affect change. You cannot target just one segment of the schoolhouse and expect to see a different culture of learning and growth.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on Marshall's question. Is it worth it? Do you find that because of the single salary system and $40,000 is the rookie teacher and the $100,000 is the vet, that these pay for performance programs are typically drawing the younger teacher?
That's a good question. When we went to Denver, we were surprised. Again, we did not do a scientific study by any stretch of the imagination. But the experienced teachers in Denver were much more positive about the compensation system than the new teachers who wanted to know and understand how much they were going to get paid. You know, one of the things about Denver is, of course, you don't really know. You know, one of the things that folks complain about is, you know, I go to fill out an application for credit, and they ask how much you get paid, and I can't really answer, you know. And so there's that kind of stability and those kind of issues. That said, there is no question that newer teachers, I won't even call them younger because of the generation of teachers now that come into the classroom are varied in age, but newer teachers are significantly more open to new types of compensation. They're significantly more open to seeing their classrooms assessed. They're significantly more open to the concept that one of their core responsibilities is that students ought to be learning and that ought to be measured. So there is some significant movement in that direction. You know, I mean, at least my overall conclusion is that pay-for-performance systems that don't, you know, we have to decide as a country what our political will is. You read the research from Linda Darling-Hammond, and it's pretty clear that when we compare what's going on in our country with countries around the world who are doing it right, then we can, you know, if we're talking about, you know, I was in front of a group of businessmen, and one of the guys stood up and said, I would venture to guess that every single one of us has at least part of our compensation based on our performance. And so I can't see why you teachers wouldn't feel the same way we do it. And I said, I venture to guess that there is not a person in this room making less than $50,000 a year. So if you're going to pay me $75,000 a year, give any teacher the average salary in this room and tell them that they have to work harder to get a bonus on top of that, and every teacher in America would sign up for it. And so we're not really serious in this country about making teaching the kind of profession that it ought to be and having a baseline compensation that it ought to have. Once we get serious about that, everything else can be on the table. But until we're serious about that, then we're really kind of tinkering around the edges with this policy stuff, trying to put Band-Aids on huge problems that won't be addressed until we address those issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Personal thank you to both the speakers for coming out tonight and taking time out of your very, very busy schedules. So busy that they can barely answer email or a telephone call because they're always working all the time. In the tradition and the spirit of the colloquium, it is a tradition that we have a student give a formal thank you to our speakers, and tonight John will be doing that for us.
Ms. Davis, Mr. Eubanks, On behalf of 788 class, I want to just formally thank you for your time, for your caring to come out and impart your wisdom to us. And the fact you're here shows you're a dedicated professional and you're passionate about education and children. So I'd like to thank you for that, present you with a little token of our appreciation for your
In this
time.
economy, and because we're in education, we have no money, but we do have it.